You're listening to Polymatic.media, episode 37 for April 15th, 2018. Welcome to the Polymaticast. Hey, John, how's it going?
Really? You really enunciated the crap out of that date there.
I know. Well, so for people who don't get to hear all this fun stuff when I screw up, it's because I try to do it all in one shot, and if I don't enunciate, the logic in my head starts to I felt my head filling in 2017 into 2018 as I was saying it. So So if I don't do that, but for you can always clip out the little bits of gaps.
You know what? What I'm going to do, I'm going to put all the different attempts of you over the last 37 episodes, put them all together.
Yeah, but then what you'll realize is how long it takes to do that.
Yeah. Way too much time.
And then you'll be like, that's not worth it.
Yep.
So, hello, everyone. How's it going?
How are you doing?
Last couple of weeks have been up and down in terms of level of intensity of stuff at work, and it's just too much stuff to do, and tensions are easy to flame very quickly. And then so I've been living in a world of a little of that, but there is a little progress that's happening, some good things. One of the things I started to do is I want to start rewiring my this downstairs studio area to be cleaner, because if you leave things left alone, people will move their headphone cable around, and all of a sudden it turns into a big knot, and then enter 5 years later, it's a big mess. And then people put little pencils here and little pens here that they go to during the show, and there's just a bunch of stuff all just littered around, just hanging out, that they play with during the show. So I just want to kind of make everything nice and clean and make the wires a little cable managed and hidden and all that stuff. So one of the first attempts is, because I've had to do a mic refresh because some of the original mics I had started dying, I decided to get these boom arms because I had these desktop boom stands. So been doing a little bit of studio upgrades here and here and here, and I have 2 boom arms to replace out of the 5 that are here. So I'll do that, and then eventually I'll start working around the budget of replacing microphones, and then I will have abundance of spare good microphones for cases when there's more than 5 or 8 people that need to be wired up for mics.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And then I have desktop stands, and then I have other stands, and so I'm going through that very slowly. And in that effort,
you can rent out your basement for podcasters.
Yeah, I had that thought, but there's no way to, you have to have a whole side location. But anyhow, this is a whole long rant that could get into the value of what Neistat is doing right now. I totally get what he's doing and whether he's stated that or he's realized it, but he's basically making a co-working space for creators.
Yep.
Right. And maybe I don't think he's going to charge so much for it as he's going to use it as an opportunity to be a production environment. And I don't have an ultimate space like that. But if I was him, with enough abundance of resources and money and a want to do that, I had this kind of feeling or idea years ago, but I'm not Elon Musk rich. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think there's a value to be added there for having if you hit 10,000 subscribers, if you're well above 10,000 with YouTube, you have access to their space. You can rent real professional area and time, and I think that there needs to be something that for everybody, for people to come in and do their little YouTube thing and rent some time, and maybe that is a good marketplace. Maybe Philadelphia needs one of those, but you need money for that.
Yeah.
I would be happy to be part of something like that. Instead of a hacker area for people who want to do a version for creators. So
creator space.
Yeah, basically a co-working creator space. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So anyhow, let's go beyond that rant. So how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I just finished a major project, which we're going to talk about today as well. So that's that took me a long time to complete because it's a very complicated subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been looking into investing into an iPad Pro with, and I've been psyching myself up to put the money away to,
Mm-hmm.
buy it somewhere in May. So I'm looking forward to getting one of those, and then I can do
Well,
some art on the go.
yeah, okay, so that was it. That was I was gonna get why. What was the value add there? So it's really you have one intended purpose for it. Now, given the price on it,
The
I guess
reason
that's
the reason
cheaper
why
than the
is I've tried it. I've
yeah.
tried them,
Mm-hmm.
and I like the Apple Pencil. It's not very good. I have used
Yeah.
several iPads in the past, and I've used one of those Wacom, like the Wacom pens that they have, and they suck, right?
Yeah.
But this thing actually works and feels like actually like you're sketching with a pencil, right?
Yeah.
There's it's slightly, um, you know, hard to explain. It's closer to paper than any other thing
Yeah.
they have. So
I
that's why I want to do it. That's why I want to get one, and I'm going to get
I
like the biggest one they can get.
I think Microsoft misstep. They bought Entrig or whatever it was, that technology, and a lot of people don't like it. And the people that say, "Oh, I think I could get adapted to this," but apparently it's too sensitive, and its sensitivity is too much, which is not the thing that most artists want to just pick up and start, scribbling on something like you're talking about. And so that's the only reason the Surface Pro hasn't won this battle like 5 years ago, as a result of that. That's what I
Also,
understand.
the Surface Books and the Surface Pro things their batteries are not as good. Right?
Yeah.
So if you look at the iPad, it's just focusing on that task, right? So it's just doing that application.
Right.
The Windows machines are doing updates and all sorts of other crap in the background, and you don't want your money to go wasted on something like that, right? So I understand it. The same thing for the Wacom tablets. So Wacom has some tablets of their own, but they have the same problem. Their battery is just not enough.
Yeah.
And if I can go 12 hours on one single battery and just keep drawing, I'm really happy with that.
The and not to defend anything because it's a non-issue at this point, but Microsoft did. They had Windows RT, and they won this battle in terms of an ultimate mobile operating system. They finally got around to like, all right, fine, we'll do it because everyone's competitive with us. But now, like they won that battle in terms from the technology layer. Like they solved that problem perfectly. The problem is that their OS was not being utilized. No community was building anything good or worthy of it. And so those things just like phased away very quickly. And thank God for that. But you had lots of very better battery performant, low end, low power, ARM based devices that would have won that area perfectly if there was a community for it. And sadly, there is not. So there's no, iPad Pro at a $300 price point that Microsoft could have delivered for you. And so, what you do is you get that thing's like $1,000,
For the iPad
something like
Pro?
that.
Yeah, it's about $1,000.
Yeah, it's expensive.
And then you still have to buy the pen.
Oh,
the
that's
pencil,
what, another $100 bucks?
$100, yes.
Yeah, okay. So $1,100 for. But from what I understand, if you compare that to like the Wacom mobile equivalent of that, you're getting a better price value there for the iPad Pro.
Yeah, for the iPad, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the Wacom thing is, I think it's $1,200 or more.
Plus you're getting the iOS universe.
And
attached.
it's not going to be my main art thing, right? Because I have a Cintiq too. But if I'm on the go and I want to be on the go a little bit more than I am right now, if I want to go do art, I don't want to have to go and boot up my machine and log in and go through all the fracking updates.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
Anyway,
but the thing I was gonna bust your balls on was, that's $11 just drawing tablet.
Yeah,
there's this thing called paper.
But
in the
really
same
nice
respect,
same
respect, if you want something like that and you can afford it, then I'll go for it.
But the other thing is that for paper, the chance that you use an eraser and then erase stuff, you can always go back on the iPad or on
Right.
the digital version. I use a lot of digital stuff for that, so I don't even use paper anymore for that. But I and the iPad now also has the application that I like for the Windows version, right? So the Windows Clip Studio Paint, and it's now also an iPad. So I'm like, yeah, okay, might as well just do that instead of buying a Wacom tablet.
Mm-hmm.
So about this week, I delivered something at work. We had a project that we released, which is certificates. We're selling certificates at work now. So I just want to be upfront. The company I work for sells certificates now. Yay! So there you go.
So we're gonna talk about certificates, why, what they are, what you need to know, and why you should have them. And I think whether everyone's aware or not, they are going to be vital and important going forward, especially if you have some concerns about your security and your website. And if you are, I don't want to use Facebook. Facebook was always a great reference now, but now it is tainted with bad things. But if you are trying to build a large platform or community, I think you need a certificate and you need to be rolling with SSL for your website.
Well, basically anything where anybody has to log in, you're gonna need a certificate at some point, because browsers are gonna just not allow you to log into anything.
Right, and that's the other bit
anymore.
Yeah, the consortium used to be maintained by like an independent organization, and they weren't doing enough over the years, and so the major browser manufacturers all got together and pitched them a brand new specification, and the consortium said no, and then they went ahead anyways because they're the ones who are producing the things that maintain all of the things like HTML5. That's how that came about. And then the consortium says, yeah, sure, let's attach our ideas to it as well. And so the
let's
major
not have any specifications anymore.
Right. And now the major browsers have said, you know what? We're tired of this security conversation. We are going SSL only. It's going to be SSL everywhere. It's going to be HTTPS everywhere. And when you get into HTTP 2.0, you're not going to have a choice, right? And plain old unencrypted transports are going away. And no one's going to have a choice. And you won't be able to work on the internet anymore unless you are ready for it. So now's the time to know. Now's the time that is well beyond the point you should know what you need to know. And so that's what this show is about.
Yep.
For today.
Okay, so
where do we start?
Yeah, okay, so what can you do with a certificate, right? So there's multiple types of certificates you can use. For us, we can sign our applications and our code with them. You can use them to sign documents. You can encrypt the traffic between your browser and a website, which is very simplistic. You can encrypt any type of traffic that goes over TCP. So you can just wrap it around any connection and then have it unwrapped on the other side. You can also do WebSockets, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Everything, basically anything you can just wrap the certificate around it. Not the certificate, but the encryption around it with that certificate.
Let me just take one moment to interject for those who might not be following. So certificates are part of how you create a SSL certificate, which is it's a mechanism that allows you to have a public-private side key combination that allows you to it's used inside of the encryption tunnel, right? So when you go to HTTPS Facebook, they have certificates. And John will go through and explain like what the external relationships are there. But this is sort of like a fingerprint that's unique between you, your web browser, and Facebook. And this combo right there allows you to have a private conduit into Facebook servers. So no one can come along on the same network in the house or between you and your ISP and start snooping your password and snooping all your privacy data. Now, we know Facebook is being leaky right now, and that's a different problem.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with...
But that has nothing to do
SSL,
with encryption tunnels. So anytime you see HTTPS, you are going over and negotiating over what we call SSL.
Yeah.
a secured socket layer. And there's a special private relationship, a private and a public relationship that where certificates come in play. And this is sort of this private signature for you as the whatever the primary domain, apple.com, gmail.com, right? Google.com, Facebook.com, all Instagram, right? All the favorite places you go for. And even if you're on your mobile device going through somebody's app like Instagram, you're still going over SSL whether you realize it or not. And so it's important for security, and certificates are a primary component to how all this technology works.
Yep.
Yep.
So basically for those things, for a secure connection to be made, right, you need those components. So you start out with a private key, which is something that you only know, right? So you, as the person who sets it up, you and the server that it's on are the only ones that actually know what that private key is.
Well,
now,
you and your device, right? Your phone, your tablet, your laptop.
No, the only one that actually knows the private key is the server.
Right.
And you, the person that set it up.
Right.
Right. So you.
Oh, you're talking about the person who created the certificate. Yes, that's true. Yes, correct. I thought you were talking about you as in the
certificate is actually
user.
A part you get after you're done setting everything up. Something you use to indicate, hey, that's this key, and this is valid. So let's start when you set it up, right? So say you have your own personal website and you have it on a virtual server or something, and you want to set up your own SSL. So there are several options for this. We'll get to Let's Encrypt later, which is another thing that we need to explain when you were talking about certificates. But let's say you want to get one of those traditional ones and the basic certificate. So you'll need a private key. Now on Linux, you usually generate those with OpenSSL. So you generate a key, and when you generate a key, you can also select to create a certificate signing request. Basically, your key is used to create a little message for a certificate authority, which is a company like VeriSign, Komodo, all sorts of other different companies. Used to be Symantec, which doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Although
your company.
Well, yeah, we're not a CA, so that's a different thing. We're actually just reselling. So because you don't want to be a CA, because as soon as you're a CA, you're like a giant big target. So you create a key with OpenSSL. Now I have a link for that, Polymatic link /HG for that. Tells you how all the different, how you can generate a key on OpenSSL, how you can generate one on IIS. I said it right this time. And you can use that to create the key and the certificate signing request. Now, the certificate signing request is that little message that says, hey, the fingerprint of the key is this, and I want you to sign it for me. Sign, you, the certificate authority, the person that says this is a valid key. You're actually the one you're supposed to have that key. With that, you can go there and they'll sign it for you and create a certificate. Now, when you set up the key, you have a choice out of different key types. So you have RSA, DSA, and you have ECC. Now, ECC is a lot newer. Not everything supports it yet, unfortunately, but it does give you a stronger key, and the certificates are a lot smaller. So that means that as soon as you try to connect, it's a lot faster to get the connection, get everything set up and everything secure. The faster you get it secure, the better it is, right? So when you create your key, you have to fill in a common name, which is the main name that you use, that you want to sign, you want to have a certificate for. So when you go to Alan's stupidblog.com, you let's do chase.com, huh?
Right.
So when you go there, you get the certificate, you get the HTTPS in your browser bar.
So there is, and I know you're going to get there, but you got to keep in mind common names, and there are different kind of SSL certificates. We'll talk about wildcard and then the very specific one. But the common name has to match.
Yeah.
Right. So a wildcard is anything dot johnsgreatestblog.com,
Yeah.
which I don't think exists, but maybe it does. And then anything that's in the wildcard, the first, what we call a zone, is accepted by that certificate as long as it's installed in all the right places.
Well, the CSR, for the CSR, it's not really needed to have the certificate, the common name to be the same as the domain.
But
as long as you have like a CSR, it doesn't
Right.
matter what the domain name is in there.
But a normal common name before the wildcards, because this didn't come right away, you literally have to have your www.apple.com.
Yeah.
And that's the first mistake people start making when they start doing these certificates.
But for most CAs, it doesn't matter what is in the CSR besides the actual key, because you won't be allowed to add specific domains to that list. And you can actually remove everything that's in the list. It's in the CSR and just send them a different domain name and different stuff. But that's, if you want to get it done quickly, you probably want to sign it with like a common name that's actually the domain name you're trying to sign it with.
Right. So let me ask this question, because I know I've totally killing your scripted list of things that go down.
Whoops.
But the apple.com is different than the apple.net and the apple.org and the Gmail, .com and your google.com, .net, .org, .nl, .co.uk. So you need a certificate for every one of those bounding domains, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So keep in mind that if you own 3 domains pointing to one website, you need to buy, spend, create, get certificates for each of those.
No, you don't.
You
And we'll get
don't.
to that in a minute.
Okay, good.
Okay, so if you so on Linux you'll use OpenSSL. On IIS,
Yeah.
you use IIS Manager. I think I don't know this,
Which is Microsoft's
is
web
more
server.
your thing. So
Yeah.
but you'll still need the CSR, and those tools will make one for you, right? So if you want to know more about how to actually generate a CSR, you just go to Polymatic.media/HG. This is the company I work for. They have like a FAQ on how that works for every different types of software.
Cool. Awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about what kind of certificates there are, because this is what comes into your question. So there's different types of validations, and then there's different types of certificates. So let's say you have a simple blog. You don't really need anything special, nothing's, with fancy, like a green bar with your company name in there.
Right.
You can go for domain validation. The cool thing about that is that usually the domain validations are done within like 10 minutes. So if you're fast setting up all the different keys that you need to do, it's easy and fast, and it gives the same type of security that normal other validations have. The technology is the same. The only thing is the little check mark, the little extra green bar thingy.
Certification.
So there's domain validation, there's organization validation, and there's extended validation, which is EV, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is in that order of how fancy it is, but also in price. So if you have a DV, it's a lot cheaper than an OV or an EV.
Right. Also, all these things come with a cost, and there's signing. There's like level of complexity, right? The bits, right?
Yeah. Well, most CAs won't accept anything below 2048 anymore. So
right.
But you can okay. So then there's different types of certificates. So you have a single, which is usually something you use for allensblog.com.
Right. Well, or www.allensblog.com.
Okay.
Or blog.allensblog.com. Mm-hmm. Would they have to be 2 different certificates for that type?
If you're going for a single one, a single certificate, which is the cheapest probably, DV single, then you're going to go for multiple certificates. If you go for a multi-SON certificate,
yep,
you can have multiple names in there. So you can have like www.allensblog.com, johnsblog.com. You can have mylittlepony.com. Whatever
Right.
you want, you can put that in there. The only thing is that you need to validate the ownership of all those domains. And for DV, OV, and EV, there's different types of validations that need to be done. So if you have an EV, which is an extended validation, they go call the owner of the domain. They go through the whois. They go through Chamber of Commerce type deals to find all the information they need to validate that you are actually you and that you work for that company and you are valid to get the certificate for that domain, besides the actual domain validation.
Now, the bad analogy to make here for those who aren't really following or zoning out, it's kind of like Twitter verification. You are verified to be who you say you are. You are the real John, on Twitter, right? And you get that little signing verification. And this SSL is part of validating.
It's a lot worse.
It's a lot. Okay, but you understand what I'm saying is that to make the analogy for someone who might not be fully understanding the importance of this is you want to make sure that the domain you're going to is apple.com, because maybe somewhere along the lines you're a small startup and you didn't get the .org, the .com, the .edu, the .whatever, and a domain squatter came along. And they basically copied and pasted your website, except login takes you into a porn site instead. And so you get an SSL certificate, you validate, you spend some extra money on it, right? And it validates that you are the related legitimate organization and or person and or website.
So this goes for organization validation, extended validation, not for domain validation.
Right.
So that's the validation types. There's EV, OV, and DV. And then you have for certificate types, you have single, multi, wildcard, and multi-wildcard. Now, multi-wildcard is a little different. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
But for multi, so we've done single. The multi, you can have like different domains in there. You can have multiple versions of the domains. That's called a subject alternative name. And those subject alternative names you can either put them in the CSR or you can add them later. So let's say you bought a certificate, a very expensive EV certificate for your company, and you want to add another domain to your list of company sites. You can just add that to your certificate, and they will go through with a reissue. You'll go through another verification process for all those domains, and then they will issue a new certificate for that. Usually those are free, so even so those multi name certificates are actually quite valuable if you go for a very expensive domain. This is probably why they're so expensive too. But then you have wildcard certificates. So if you want to say, get a certificate that works for everything.yourdomainname.com, you can get one of those too. But the problem with those is that they're not available in EV format. So you cannot get the green bar that says your company name in there. That's just because certificate authorities don't want to do that. Because that's, kind of cuts into their business on the multi-domain thing, probably.
Yeah.
And then
the other importance here is that, look, the domain name, right? Okay, so we were saying www.johnsultimateblog.com. I keep changing that. It's fine. I'm going to keep doing that. Ultimateblog.com. Under the hood, it goes to a set of IP addresses through the domain stuff, okay? But the certificate helps establish that encryption tunnel between you and them so that your communication from your device to them is private. And the certificate signing gets into the juggling of all these dynamic bits, but it's decoupled from a sense of that it knows what the domains that need to be related to it. It doesn't know what IP addresses that need to be related to it. And so that's why the public-private key certificate registrations come in play, because there's parts of the certificate that have to be installed on the correct legitimate web servers or whatever server devices. And that's how you verify that the two of you are talking on the correct thing, because a hacker can come along and find a way to make, Alan's blog dot whatever point to John's ultimate blog dot net. And if you're not careful and you're looking for John's ultimate blog and you Google it and you pick the .net because whatever, you might be going to the wrong one, and they shouldn't have John's actual certificate, so they can't be verified that you're talking to the correct thing. So they can't use John's encryption keys and encryption certificates to establish his tunnel on their devices and then, throw Facebook ads on it. Does that make any sense?
So when you go through this, you need both the key, you need the private key, and you need the certificate. Right? Yeah. So you need to have both on the server, because that's how it validates that it's the actual good connection.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to talk about all the types, because I think this clarifying what the value of this is important. I just it is hard to establish the understanding. Oh, why do I care? What's important? Why is it complicated? Well, it's complicated because the internet is a complex tool that we all just kind of turn on a thing and go to www.whatever, and then we sign in. And you don't realize there's a level of complexity that's there at the networking and then the certificate and encryption levels. So, so anyhow, I just needed to insert that in why all these different types matter. And not every organization, you're going to go to your Squarespace site. It's a one-to-one. It's johnsultimateblog.com, but it's not dev.johnsultimateblog.com, upload.johnsultimateblog.com, api.johnsultimateblog.com.
Let's use example.com, because that's actually a domain name you can actually use for, giving out examples.
Okay.
So there's one other type that we need to talk about, which is called a multi-wildcard. Okay. So the same as like a normal multi, where you're going to have multiple names in there and different extensions. Mm-hmm. You can also do multiple names and wildcards. So you can have like example.com or example.net, star.example.net. Everything before that you can have with that. Okay. So those are actually pretty useful. But they can, I think only Komodo does those. So it's another exemption from other things. So that's something that I had to code in the last week.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful time that I found out about those.
Yeah.
So yeah. So after you go through the whole validation process, which can take like a couple of days or even a week if you're going for an extended validation, because they have to check everything, right? They have to go through the validation. So if you hand out a certificate like they did for Google, I think Symantec did that, and that's why Google got really upset with them. So they if you give out a certificate for Google.com, that's pretty bad, right? So you don't own that domain, and if they didn't check, right, that's something that happened with Google, with Symantec, and I think DigiNotar, which is one of the Dutch certificate guy. There was one in Turkey that got pretty hacked. And if you cannot trust those certificate authorities, right, then things, it doesn't really matter. The fact that there's a certificate on it, so it's HTTPS, doesn't mean it's that, company, right? It's secure. Your connection is secure, but you don't know who is on the other side. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the bad thing about certificates, because you can have a secure connection, but the connection can be with anybody. So that's where the OV and the EV certificates come in, because they validate that the person who signed off on the key is actually the person that's supposed to be that, and they have all sorts of. They go through your stuff. That's why those are more expensive, because it takes more time to do it, and it takes more money to do it, and you have to have all this documentation ready. And I went through it a week ago, and it was really, really, really interesting.
And certificate authorities,
they have to be careful, because if they're not, they're gonna get semantic.
They're the external independent organization that is supposed to be the trustworthy organization that validates and verifies that the signature is correct and is registered to the right, depending on the context of EV or, whatever the different types of certificate levels. And additionally, level encryption, all that other stuff, so that you can say, okay, that signature matches up with what we expect and goes to where we expect and has been verified and validated on the other end, and it independently is a part of this sort of circus act that says when you go to your Instagram, that is a safe site to encrypt with, because that is legitimately Instagram servers by the right organization that owns Instagram servers that serves Instagram things. That makes sense.
It also, if you go to a website that has an extended validation certificate, you see it in the browser bar.
Right.
And so if you go to google.com, I don't think if Google does it, but
this is not, as I mentioned before, isn't it just important for websites? This is important for all technologies that communicate on the internet that go over SSL, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's fundamentally what that's about. But what you can do is, John's right, you can go into your web browser. In Chrome, for example, right to the very left of the address bar, there's a little lock or unlock, right? If you're on an HTTPS site, then it should have an actual valid, verifiable SSL certificate. And there should be a lock, and you click on the lock, and it'll give you the organizational information and the details. And if something doesn't look right, then maybe you don't want to be connected to that site.
Yeah, so for domain validation, it doesn't actually show the company information in there. But for OV and EV, it does show it. And if you have EV, it will also show the company name in the address bar, so in front of your URL. So Google doesn't actually do this. It doesn't actually show you I think they have OV domains, so that's probably because they have a wildcard on it. So that's probably how they do it. Also, Google is their own certificate authority, so they can just do whatever they want. Okay, so let's talk about. I think we have done the different types to death. Let's talk about Let's Encrypt. Right, because
you had mentioned earlier the different kinds of, like, RSA, for example, DSA. There's different algorithms, right, for the signing and the certificate generations. So that stuff is important. So if you're going after an RSA cert, make sure that you're doing all the right things with regards to RSA, because when you're starting to do key generations and things, this stuff is incredibly important.
Yeah.
RSA and I guess DSA, I don't really recall, but the history is RSA was the first. They were the company, the organization that started a lot of this effort, and they are known for encryption algorithms and the mathematics, complex mathematics regarding that. So. So, keep that in mind, that RSA is a very good certificate. Now, to this conversation, John is telling me about, ECC and DSA. That doesn't sound familiar, but it sounds familiar, but it doesn't sound familiar. But the point is that there are different algorithms. So back in the very early days, you really only had RSA was the Cadillac of trustworthy certificate signing algorithms to use for encryption. So keep in mind that those things do matter. If you have your, instead of, like, for example, Sony is an electronics brand manufacturer you recognize, but Boney is not a brand manufacturer name that you would recognize. So, depending on your use of encryption, right, and certificate authorities, that sometimes the brand comes along with a trustworthy reputation. So that's just important. I think that's worth being said. Just don't get any old, like, $5 certificate, right? $10 certificate. That comes with some kind of cost, and you should question it.
Well, the thing is, you can get them signed with any type of certificate. So you can get an RSA certificate, RSA key. And you can get it signed. You can get an ECC key, and you can get that signed. The difference is that ECC has the certificates are a lot smaller, so it makes the connection a lot easier to make,
Mm-hmm.
and the keys are stronger. So if you have a 256-bit ECC key, it's equivalent to a 3,000 something bit RSA key in strength. So the problem with that is that it's not supported in all devices, especially older devices. It's not going to be supported. So
if you're looking for the highest compatibility, right, the point that John's making is that's going to be important, right?
Basically, anything supports RSA. So
yeah, and I will tell you, just about all the internet does at this point. So not knocking ECC, just saying it's like if you're just doing it for you, between you, your laptop, and your home theater device that you put on an Arduino board or something, fantastic. But if you're trying to have a Facebook level, social media, Twitter level kind of thing, then no, that's probably not the choice you want to make.
The difference
at
is
this
not
point.
the difference is not the technology in this case. So if you have an RSA key, like a 2048-bit key, and you get a DV, it's the same thing as you would get an EV certificate. It's the same technology. The only difference is that your name is in there or not, right? And they validate that stuff. So that also brings me to Let's Encrypt. Let's Encrypt is a way to get a free certificate. So if you have, I don't know if it's available for Windows machines yet, or if it's available for Windows servers yet, but they basically do a domain validation, and I think we should cut back to domain validations in a second. They do a domain validation by putting a file on the host. So if you have like a web server, they place a little file in the directory that's public, and they validate against that to make sure that you own the domain name. So you're trying to get a certificate for your domain, and we'll check on that domain. Is that file there? Yes, it is. It contains everything we thought it would. And they would say, yes, it's the same person, and they give out the certificate. Now, those certificates are only valid for 90 days. So if you have your, you have to revalidate them every 90 days as well. So you have to set up a cron job. It does it weekly and checks if they need to be renewed, and then they renew the certificate. So it is cheap. It works the same way, right? They don't have EV, they don't have OV, so there's not really a big competition there. But for your personal blog, that's fine, right? Only they have no way of verifying that it's actually you, right? So your visitors don't know that it's you. You could start spouting all sorts of conspiracy theories, and they wouldn't know it was you or not, right? So that's what the EV part is for, or the OV.
So, I mean, there are two targets here for getting a certificate. It's not just getting good, valid, verifiable encryption, right? The encryption is the first really important bit, but also make sure that you are certified to be the one encrypting for that destination.
Also, if you have Let's Encrypt, that's something that we ran into when we tried to put the podcast into the iTunes podcast library.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't accept Let's Encrypt certificates on your website.
Yep. Okay. And this goes back to the conversation about what is supported everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep. The good quality Cadillac combos of what's supported everywhere.
In this case, your phone would probably support it. It's not the problem with the phone. It was the ingest servers on the Apple side, where they just don't accept Let's Encrypt certificates. It's like a year and a half
Apple
ago.
is a company that is a legacy company, even though they make all your fancy new technologies and you think of them being as modern and innovative. They're as old as the 80s, right? So their behaviors they were there with money to invest and support security as it became the first time thing. So they're more likely to support more of the common legacy standards than they are likely to support the most modern iterations.
Yeah. So one more thing, the domain validation is something we just talked about with the Let's Encrypt. So for normal domain validation, you usually have the choice between three types. So you can have like an email validation, which is they just send an email to admin at your domain name, or hostmaster at, or something like that. There's like 5 or 6 different email addresses that they try, and they can also take that information from whois information, so they might validate it that way. And then there's DNS validation, which they ask you to put a CNAME in your DNS records, which is a very fast way of validating that the actual person that have control over that domain, because as soon as you have control over the validation over the DNS, then you have control over the domain.
This is a thing Google likes to do. So if you've ever attached yourself to Google services, Microsoft does similar things. They all kind of do. Amazon, same thing. It's a special code that only the two of you know.
Well, it's a known way of validating somebody's ownership of the domain.
Yep.
So
back in the day, they used to make you put a little advertisement on your website. I always hated that.
Well, the same thing with the file part. This is the third version, type of validation. You put a file on your website.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And the same thing. Google has been doing it for years with their analytics stuff. Right. It's the same technology, and the same thing that Let's Encrypt does. So Let's Encrypt also does the file validation. So that validation is done for all different types of certificates. So EV, OV, or DV, it's all the same. They all have to go through that process. So besides the validation of your company, you also have to have control over the domain. Now, so I know of some companies that recently were trying to get a certificate, and they couldn't get a certificate because the company was being whatchamacallit? Difficult. Yeah. And so there's they eventually just went for a Let's Encrypt because they had control over that part of the domain, and they could just get a certificate for that because they just had to put out a proof of concept, and then Let's Encrypt is great. Even if you have something like, for example, Shortener uses a Let's Encrypt certificate because it's cheap. I don't have to pay too much money for it. And as you know, Shortener and OG Link and everything else, it's all I pay for that crap. So
right.
If I can get a certificate that's valid and it's great, why not? If it's free, I'm happy with it. Just doesn't have a company name, just because it is not under a company. Right, and Let's Encrypt is great, but the problem with it doesn't give you. It doesn't give you the company name. So if you have something like a bank or something, you want to get an EV certificate.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, if you are an organization that you have to trust with your privacy and your financials, yes, you definitely need to require from them. You should look. I think a lot of people, first thing they're going to do is go, wait, how can I do this in the browser? And you click on the little lock and go, oh, I never noticed that. You will be surprised how many people have never understood any of this.
So let's say Google doesn't actually do that, right? So they don't show the company name in their address bar. Facebook doesn't either. And I think that's because they use wildcards for that.
Right.
But then, well, it's
but
all
at
up
least
to you.
You can verify that is a secure connection that is owned by Facebook.
Yep.
That is owned or been configured by specifically Facebook, the company, for this purpose.
So if you go to like a website for a bank, if it doesn't say the company name before it in green text, like with the country shortcut at the end, it's probably not the bank.
Right. Yep.
Right.
So your bank in America likely does not have a office in China or Russia or definitely not in Antilles.
Well,
Africa.
If you have, you can verify the certificate, right? So you can go click on the little lock and see what the information is in there, right? So in Chrome, it's like click on the lock, and then you can check a certificate if it's valid. You can open up the details and actually see what the actual registration is. That
most of the time they are to the very left of the address location bar. Sometimes they're on the far right, but they are there, and you would only see it signed if you're in HTTPS protocol mode. The beginning of your address. If you click on the address bar, it will reveal whether you're HTTP:// or HTTPS.
But with the advent of Let's Encrypt, you now also see a lot of spam and scam sites also have HTTPS because free
Right.
HTTPS, right?
If you're curious, you just click, and then you don't click through the spam ad. You go to the base site, and then you look to see if what their legitimacy of their certificate is.
Yep.
So
I've been trying to look at some certain websites if they actually do have like an EV certificate. If you look at paypal.com, it has an EV certificate because they have to have that thing. So it shows you on the left, green, PayPal Inc. US.
The other bit about that is because of this, PayPal, www.paypal.com, not some other variant .paypal.com for you to sign in and do your signing and whatever. It's going to be a one-for-one on that. That's part of your understanding the trust relationship. So if you look at an address and it says something starts with something that you don't expect, .paypal.com, keep looking to see if there's more stuff attached.
Well, you can have a multi domain EV certificate, right? So you can have like www.example.com or login.yourdomain.com or example.com in this case, right? So you can have multi domain EV certificates. So it is possible. It's just very expensive. You can pay a lot of money for those, and for every single host name you add, you have to pay more money. And if you want a wildcard, it's just not possible unless you go OV or less. And then you can have multi-wildcard certificates, but then you get in a whole different territory.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of information, I think. We can go through a lot of information about certificates, but then we dive into how that actually works and stuff, and I think that's a little bit too much. That will take a little bit too much time, I think.
So, I think there is more to this. Maybe this is a part one, and we do pick up a part two, because there's a lot more to know about. But I think the bits that are important are literally the bits. The higher the number, the better. Keep in mind there is some performance loss there. The more complicated the encryption is, the slower it will be. But that is sort of less of a poignant argument today, because back in the day, yes, your SSL connection was a lot faster when you're 256-bit over 1,000-bit, right? And now, to John's point, you want to be 2K or higher. You don't want to be anything less.
Well, that's for RSA and DSA, right? But for ECC, you can go with 256.
Right.
That's why it's faster, and
Yeah.
Unless I misunderstand that, right?
That if you're looking for high speeds for the whole world, the whole internet, okay, you gotta pick correctly there. If you're just looking for doing an encryption for yourself, the encryption is important, but it's far more compromisable when the lower the bit, right? Mm. So
if you want to know more about ECC, which is something that's interesting, Polymatic.link/HH, Computer File did a very good explainer about how that actually works. Mm. So it's a interesting watch if you're into the whole cryptography part.
If you are somebody who has a blog, cares about anything regarding retaining information, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, credit card numbers, right? Which there's a whole conversation bit about that regarding the laws on how that should work. You shouldn't really be storing credit card numbers. But besides all that kind of stuff, you need a certificate. If you're just johnsfancyblog.com, okay, there's less of an argument you need there. But if you're John's fancyartistcommunity.com with people's logins, then yes, you should and you need a certificate.
Yep.
If it's mytours.com, going to wherever you're going to be around and no one's signing in, they're just looking for information, you don't necessarily need a certificate.
Well, you're going to need one eventually, because
but you will.
Even if you just have a blog and you have like WordPress on it, right? You're still logging into that, and somebody can capture that login, and then they can deface your website, and that would really suck. Like if you go to Turkey or some other place, they're messing with their internet connection over there, and they're going to capture your data if you don't have HTTPS.
And I'm sure we're not in these countries, but there are parts of the world that at the network from the country out to the rest of the world level are proxying every single thing. They have full control. So the more encryption tunnels that you can put in place that take you outside of or bypass those things, the better.
Yeah, that's also the thing with HTTPS, because you wrap everything inside of that little encryption tunnel. You nobody can actually see what you're visiting on the website. So if you're going to Tumblr and you're watching all the naughty stuff, nobody can see what you're doing besides you and Tumblr. Right?
Yeah, there are lots of what we call sniffer network tools that can be done for you to see what's going on. And if you're unencrypted, if you're normal plain old HTTP, you can see stuff. When I was a network engineer, I had this tool by a company called Fluke. They make amazing network tools, but this little handheld portable one, which the thing to hold that thing was like a $25,000 tool. And you got to keep in mind, smartphones were not prominent. So it was not like smartphone technology now they make things like that. But I literally, when I needed to solve a network problem, I literally just tap into the office network or even the Wi-Fi, and I could go right up through the Wi-Fi gear, straight in up over the switches, out whatever specific interface I wanted to look at, go right in up through the router, look in from its third or fourth interface, go straight down to the thing, and then see people were looking at QVC or eBay. And I could sit there and I could watch them because all their traffic was unencrypted. And I could see, I see their password, boom, 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 boom. And there are software-based tools that you can put on your cell phone and you can put on your laptop that are there for network people, but also hackers take advantage of it. So, all it takes is someone with the right device just kind of walking along your city, looking at all your unencrypted Wi-Fi, finding all your unencrypted devices and say, oh, look at that. That's Amazon password by John Tory, and then start going ahead and start ordering crap, right? Now, Amazon doesn't allow you to not have an SSL certificate, but in the days they didn't do that, you could sit there and you can just see it was all open text. So having privacy encryption tunnels is very important. And then verifiable privacy encryption tunnels to the right people that you're supposed to be connecting with, that you assume you're connecting with. That's why all this stuff is very important. And it will be a thing that is a factor that is required to work on the internet in the near future, and sooner rather than you realize.
Yeah, especially with the new privacy laws in Europe coming up in May.
Yep, and
it's
then
probably
more
also a good topic for the future for future episodes.
And then what's going to come out of the Facebook stuff that we all hope is that there are actually regulated privacy rules that is required by all these big social media network companies and ISPs that is going to be put on them to saying, this is how you cannot use or resell your customer information, which is where they make all their money, whether they're honest about it or not. Facebook has been selling your demographic information for a very long time, aside from selling it directly back to you.
The thing with that is, I think that's a different tangent, but
it is. But the same thing with
I don't
Twitter
agree with
and all
that.
of them.
There should be regulation on that part, but it's more of what they did. They never told their customers at all.
Yep.
And that's a different thing. And if you put slap regulation on that, it's only going to benefit the big ones because they can actually put money towards that and have like somebody who is actually working on that 24/7. And if you're a small new company or a small new social network you're trying to set up, you're going to run into trouble because
the impetus of that tangent was that the certificate stuff is very important to make sure that you're communicating privately and encrypted and securely with the right people. And then there's going to be versions of this that are going to come at a much more mass important level that are going to amplify things like SSL and certificates more, which is a larger conversation about your privacy and your security on a public, hosted network system, right? We call the internet. So all these things are going to get amplified, and it's good for you to start to know now, even though I would argue that it's too late. You should have known better. But to that point, knowing now is going to help you in the future and deal with the changes when they do actually come. And there's going to be lots of them. And I think this is a healthy thing to happen, but it's very important. So
I just want to point out before we go on to fun stuff.
Yep.
The whole Facebook debacle was not related to certificates. It wasn't a hack or something like that. It was actually
This is
people abusing rights inside the company itself to get to data of other people.
That is a privacy conversation.
Yeah.
All your traffic was encrypted inside and out of Facebook the whole time.
Yeah, and then everything outside of it didn't. But hey,
you're right. They
could have used
it's a Facebook. It's just because it's a relevant conversation, not trying to focus on Facebook as the bit, just as something that's identifiable.
But I think we should discuss the whole new European GDPR regulation stuff that's happening right now. I think we should probably do that next episode. It's a very, very deep. I can do a very deep dive on that because I have to do that for my work as well. So I might as well just give some more information out.
Yeah, I was gonna write that in my Friday email to the group. I was gonna cover GDPR, but I didn't have bandwidth to sit there and spend all the time to write on it. Yeah. So I thought about that. Given a recent conversation with a couple people, we were talking about certificates this week, as I was telling you before we started recording. And I was like, I just point them to this podcast, but maybe not. They don't need to stalk me everywhere.
Yeah, they know too much about you already.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so let's from the dry stuff to the fun stuff. To another dry topic, I think. How diverging diamonds keep you from dying. Polymatic.link/H3. This was shared by Wheezy Waiter, Craig Benzine, on Twitter. I was like,
yeah,
this is more interesting than I thought it was. So
yeah, me too. I thought I was like, I'm going to skip this. And I'm like, oh, well, wait. You got to wait a minute or two for it to finally kick in to why this is important to know about.
It's the same thing with like how we in Holland have lots of rotundas. Like it's not a crossing, but it's like a circle, and you go around it, and you go to different. It speeds up traffic. You think it might not, but it will speed up traffic. And there's lots of people in the U.S. that are anti that stuff. Yeah. And it's just a better way of doing things. And we go through experiments. Over here in the Netherlands, we have lots of different experimental traffic going on because we have a lot of traffic. We have lots of this type of stuff.
I will say, like in England, right? There's a lot of rounds, right? You seem like you're spinning around, and so roundabouts. There's a ton of them, and it's very confusing, and it looks like a big chaotic mess. But this video will give you some above sort of aerial view understanding of why there's value there. And I will say that maybe the more experimental stuff, I used to drive through an area of Jersey a lot, many years ago, and it looks like a big old mess. It is very confusing, you as the driver, but once you figure out how that system works, you will see the value and the benefit of why this is safer and better and much anti-traffic, logistics being applied. Yeah. If that makes any sense. And that was Polymatic.link/H3.
Yes.
Okay, so this came along somewhere on Twitter. I saw it. I thought that was kind of cute. I think this was related to some campaign. I didn't even know Friends, as in like the TV show, had a Twitter. But nonetheless, 8-bit Friends. I thought it was kind of cool. Polymatic.link/HA. It's not funny. It's just kind of cool. I didn't bother looking for a YouTube equivalent, but Polymatic.link/HA.
Okay. So have you watched the next one?
I did. I did a
like
little
something
bit
for you.
Yeah, but I started looking at it and go, let it go. Don't touch it. So I left it at that.
Yeah. So Spoxel, it's Pulsaurus plays that game.
Yeah.
AKA Alan loses more time. I was trying to get him to get it, but Polymatic.media/H4.
So for example, some of the games that I was playing and then I've not been playing, but I've been cultivating interest in doing it again. I haven't played in Stacks in a while, but the advantage is I had early access. I bought early access, so every time I went in, there was something new, or there was the iteration of something that was coming. All of a sudden, these things were showing up, but then there's a related campaign that I don't know about that will unlock a bunch of other stuff. So it's been a while since I've gone back and played Staxel. But the same thing was with Moonbase, right? The cat on a moon, whatever. And I was like, I wonder if there's been an update. And it's been months. And there was an update, and there was new stuff. And it was more fun again because I already mastered a certain level, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff that's unlocked. Cool. And because there's something new in it. So I think that is my game playing kind of thing. Instead of just endlessly waiting and playing every day for things to kind of up their game, I realize that I can do more with that time. And I've been going back and working on a programming project a little bit here and there every night. So my game playing is been diminished significantly while I'm working on that project. So, but that was Polymatic.link/H4.
Yes.
So, John and I both independently saw Ready Player One. We talked about it. There's a bunch of Easter eggs, and there's more. And this was one of those early articles, like literally after we both saw it. I saw this video, Polymatic.link/HB. A whole bunch of probably a reason to go back and see the movie again if you like to hunt for Easter eggs. Yeah. And ironically, the article came out around Easter. But I think it links you over to IGN or their YouTube or whatever it is. Yeah. They found 138 or something. And when I told somebody that around here who read the book, he's like, oh, okay, so they found 6 more references then. And that might be true. There might be more references in the movie than there are in the actual material. I don't know. Only you and that other person would know, I would think.
So it's Polymatic.link/HB for that, right?
Yeah, that was correct.
Okay, so there's now dolphins in Minecraft. Polymatic.link/H5.
Yeah, I've been watching the snapshots, and this is more of the Helen's gonna go back in Minecraft and then see all the new things, and so that goes back to my comment from before. There's a lot of aquatics things that are going on now that weren't there before.
The drowned, they have like zombies underwater.
Yeah, how do they call that? Well, you had said some name.
A trident.
The tridents, yes, with the tridents. But there's a name for those mythical whatever. So that was Polymatic.link/H5. Yes. Okay, so lots of new stuff in Minecraft finally. But it's been a couple years though, right?
No.
So they've been
knocking out those new updates for a while now. Yeah,
it's good. Good, fun, new things. Okay, so this is a guy that has a channel called How to Dad, and he has a very dry sense of humor, and he lives in New Zealand. He's not Australian, and he proves that point. How the differences are. I just called it G'day. But Polymatic.link/HC, he does have dry humor, understand that. But I have a friend of mine, she lives in New Zealand, and I showed her that video, and she's like, it's spot on. And she was laughing her ass off at it. Yeah. So it's funny even if you arenn't from Australia or New Zealand.
New Zealanders kind of have good humor. It's kind of a thing, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that the guy was fun. I love that guy, but I can't. I'm not subscribed to him anymore because I can't watch every single video he does. But he has some real awesome ones like that. Eventually.
Okay, so cutting back to the whole Facebook thing, who's in control? By Hank Green, Polymatic.link/H6. I saw this on Twitter and on YouTube as well.
Yeah, so that came out recently.
I thought it was a good video.
Yeah. It does surface a lot of the reality of this stuff. Yeah, I guess when you're me and John, you know a little too much. You really know if Facebook's listening to you, and then you have easy ways of figuring out whether that's true or not. Um, and there's more paranoia applied in our normal brains on average than we realize. Our
Well,
habits are tracked, and they all correlate. And so, who's really in control? Well, you are, if you're smart
to a
enough to
point.
know how to be in control.
Yeah. So when you look at that, like a friend of mine recently tried to get me onto like a website, onto an app. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm going over the terms of service for that thing. I was like, yeah, this doesn't make any sense. This is not good. And that's where, and then the person said, yeah, don't worry about it. I'm like, yeah.
So I
think that's
have my Jaybird, wireless headphones. And so when I'm at work, they're connected. They connect both to my phone and my laptop. And they do the same thing at home if I have them on. And so I had some concerns because what I was noticing is when I wasn't playing music or something, I might pause something, right? And the streaming activity is gone, stops. There are two devices connected to me, and then I would hear it go into a listening mode for a brief moment. I was like, what the hell is going on? Something's activating the microphone because the OS and the phone both know that. So I've uninstalled some apps, and the problem has gone away. But every time if I ever had something like that and I scratch the microphone and I notice it, then what do? I start talking about something weird that might be advertisable, like Skittles or radial saws or something like that, because I want to see if it shows up in one of the places I suspect, right? And so since I've uninstalled certain apps, that thing has gone away.
So
But
what
there
did
are
you
things,
uninstall?
I uninstalled all the Facebook Messenger. I uninstalled Facebook app on. I mean, I only go into Facebook for publishing the things related to podcasts and the page and stuff like that. And occasionally, when something externally is bugging the crap out of me, I'll go in there and look at my notifications and stuff. I don't really communicate on Facebook. I used to. For somewhere around February, January, for a while there, I was like putting a thing out on Twitter and then putting out a version of that on Facebook, and then I'm like, get out. I don't live there. I'm not reading that news feed. I don't
log in
didn't
using
see your dramatic post about, your hamster. Like, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. And don't come and yell at me, why didn't you see it? Why didn't you wish me something? Like, don't get in my face about it. I really don't live there. I post activity.
Hamster, by the way.
Huh?
I never posted about my hamster.
I know. I was just picking that as a random example. It was not specific to you. It was not specific to anybody. If someone has done that and thinks, well,
now
why
I feel
you
offended,
say...
Alan. Now I feel offended.
Yeah. So, and I recently got that with some relatives where they're giving me crap. Like, why didn't you acknowledge this? I'm like, because you were around there. Yeah, but my activity is very one-sided. I go in there, I say a thing, I go out. I'm there once a week for like all of 5 minutes, and then I'm out. So there was no reason for me to have Facebook apps sitting here on my laptop or my phone because I have absolutely zero need for them.
Some people are like
Pages
married
thing.
to that thing.
Yeah.
It's
So
like they do everything through Facebook. I'm like, what the hell?
yeah. So the Facebook app, I don't think was activating microphones anywhere, but I think the Messenger app was. So, as the experiment, I took it off and it's missing. And this is before all the stuff that's came out with Cambridge Analytics. So the point is that don't have a bloatware of things that you don't need that could potentially have access or been granted access to your stuff. Okay, that was a tangent we didn't need to go on. but it's still, with regard to all this security conversation, still important.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that was Polymatic.link H6. It is a good video. Go watch it. If you don't subscribe to Vlogbrothers, you probably should. That's a solid recommendation for me.
They're pretty good.
So Maggie Rogers, I know that I've talked about, but I don't know that I've highlighted her as an artist. She had a very quick upcoming thing last year. She put out some really good songs, I guess EP she's been touring. And they made a a several-minute documentary. I like her as an artist. I am looking forward to what else she does. I only own what's available, and this was a good just documentary where she is sort of giving you the insight about her music, and you get to see her on the end of that tour that she had. And I don't know, I liked it. But I also like Maggie Rogers' music, so I'm invested to want to watch this.
Yeah.
You didn't watch this, did you, John?
I did.
Oh, you did? What'd you think? Not your music, though.
It's your type of music, right? So
yeah, it's music I like.
Very recognizable.
Yeah, and so that was Polymatic.link/HD.
Yep. Okay, so I've been trying to get myself to buy an iPad Pro, and I've been watching videos, and I found this person. She doesn't have that many followers, but I think she should, because she actually goes into deep dives on stuff. So Polymatic.link/H7. John needs to get an iPad Pro. Soon,
you will.
So I've been watching all these videos to get myself to, to get one.
The hype yourself up to justify it. And per our conversation early on in the show, yeah, I think it has a reasonable justification if that is what is core or important to you. Yeah. I think if you just want an iPad on crack, I don't know. I mean, you're already spending enough money for one of those iPads, so
it's cheaper than a Cintiq, so.
Yeah, and it's cheaper than Cintiq. So, I mean, there might be some value in there. Depends on your trade.
Yeah.
Okay, so I meant to share this a while ago, but the Unreal Engine is pretty unreal. And see if you can tell this was real time or not, aside from all the YouTube linking telling you that. Reflections, Polymatic.link H/HE. I don't know, I thought it was very impressive. It is a short clip, but it shows you the example of where maybe they don't have to. They can mocap every 3D movie and then never have to ever render anything ever.
Yeah.
This is basically gaming, engine technology, looking like about as good as a pre-rendered movie.
Yeah, but this is not done on like a 1080 or something. This is done on like studio level hardware. This is not
right,
your average 3D.
Yeah, your Onyx card. Or your Tesla cards or whatever. Yeah, but still, regardless, I mean,
and a giant
it was
heap
just
of them.
rendered real time. It wasn't like it was rendered in a render farm for 4 months for this.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. So with software, just plain old software that makes your games work. So then that was Polymatic.link/HE.
So I've been watching the H3 podcast for a while now. And Deadmau5 was on there, which is actually pretty fun. He's like a nerd, a little tech dude. I think he used to be a developer too. So Polymatic.link/H8 for that. I should have had H3 for that one.
I know. I was like, man, you missed the opportunity.
I could just go into the database and change it.
Too late.
Yeah, but he was on there, and it was very entertaining. Their interviews are usually very entertaining because
because you've been you've brought it up a couple times. I am aware of them. There have been a couple of people that I follow that I like that I've listened to their shows.
Yeah.
So I'm occasionally listening to what they do, but I don't know if I'm full on ready for a 2-hour podcast like ours.
This one's pretty good. This one's actually very good, very entertaining. Yeah. He talks about Bieber and having a feud with Bieber and other people, and almost dying on a plane crash. So that's it's good. Yeah.
That was Polymatic.link/H8. Don't hate on it.
Yes.
Okay, so last one we got. This is a guy who takes recycled stuff and kind of turns it into art.
Crazy Danish people. Crazy Danish people.
Yeah, and Polymatic.link/HF. I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I don't know about you, John, but I liked it.
When I first watched it, I was like, "Is this guy Dutch or something?" But then I realized, no, that's a Danish accent.
He's a Dane. I hate him. He's not Dutch.
Danish people.
I don't know. I thought it was pretty interesting, though, what he's taking sort of other people's trash and turning it into something, something unique. So that was polymatic.link/HF.
And that brings us to the end.
Wow, that's crazy.
The episode. So, Alan, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter if you care. CHAESS. That's my last name.
You can find me on Twitter, and you have to find me on Twitter. Twitter.com/webdevie, WEBDEVVIE. For feedback, you can reach us at podcast@Polymatic.media. The music in this episode is by Say Uns, which you can find at Polymatic.link/EK. Our Twitter is The Polymatic. The website is Polymatic.media, and I hope you tune in next time.